Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. How are you feeling on a Tuesday? Good, good. I'm always glad you're always in such a good mood so early in the morning. Sometimes it takes me a little bit to wake up. Well, we've got some great stories and great guests, great content for you to get your day started off right. Glad you're here. Thanks so much for joining us today. Don't forget to, as soon as you tune in, to click like on the stream. That way we can get out in more people's feeds and we can make more friends this morning. The bigger the better. Glad to have you here today. Let's get the news started with what we're talking about today. Elon Musk says legalize fentanyl. Fentanyl? Fentanyl, like the most dangerous drug, the one that's killing everyone in all of the cities and everybody's dying and we can't even walk down the sidewalk anymore because there's bodies everywhere. Yes. He says, legalize that fentanyl. Boy, that's fascinating because just yesterday I was reading Mike Cernovich on Twitter who's saying that we need to actually make alcohol illegal. What? Which way, Western man? We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then at 7:20 this morning, this week in the FBI is saying that you shouldn't be using the public phone charging stations to charge your cell phones. I think this probably needs to be a new weekly segment. This week in if the FBI is cautioning you against using public charging stations to charge your phone, usually whenever the FBI says something, I'm kind of like, do the opposite. But in this case, it's actually pretty good advice. We'll talk about that and why at 6:20 this morning. At 6:30 today, central bank digital currencies, aka CBDC. You may have heard about them. Central banks around the world are floating the ideas of essentially issuing their own digital currencies a la Bitcoin, except instead of it being a money of the people, it would be monies of the government. Digital currencies accountable only to the central banks. And of course, that means that every single transaction that you engage in could be accounted for by, that's right, you guessed it, the government. We'll talk to economist Vance Ginn about that at 7:30 today. And I want to also talk to him today a little bit about how millennials are still being blocked out of the housing market across the country. We'll talk about that and why boomers are snapping up more houses, even more houses, to add on to their pile of wealth, and they're protecting it and keeping it away from all us millennials. One day we're just going to take it back, or boomers are just going to, age out, because that's what happens. At 7:51 today, the Dalai Lama apologizes after a really weird tongue-sucking incident. Did you see the video of this? The Dalai Lama yesterday had a little boy that he came up and the little boy asked him if he could have a hug, and instead he demanded that the boy kiss him and then kiss him on the cheek and then kiss him on the mouth, and then after that he asked him to suck his tongue. It's all the things. And push all of the buttons. Make all the sound effects. Gross, weird. Yeah. Public screaming. Yeah. Chris Morrow over the live stream says, suddenly that cash isn't so worthless, is it? Why you gotta be like that, Chris? Why you gotta point out libertarian consistencies? How dare you? We'll talk about the Dalai Lama, and I'll show that video at 7:51. It's awkward as hell. But the Babylon Bee, of course, did a great article about it. So I'll share that with you, and I'll have a good laugh at the Dalai Lama's expense. At 8 o'clock this morning, we're going to speak to someone who is based and red-pilled. We're going to speak to...
Look at her. She looks like she's 19 years old, sitting there with her, like a little lady with a race car.
Hannah Cox. She's not 19 years old, I don't think. Well, maybe she is 19 years old. We'll fantasize. We won't fantasize. We'll imagine that Hannah Cox is... Let's not imagine anything. I tell you what, abort, restart the live stream. Austin, you screwed up. This is what happens when you're live, for God's sakes. All right, Hannah Cox will join us at 8 o'clock to talk about FBI documents apparently associating internet slang like based and red pill with online extremists. Are you based and red pill? Good God, Austin, you're red as hell. Good morning. Good morning. All right, time to move on. At 8:23 today, does owning Nazi memorabilia make you a Nazi? Apparently not. We're going to talk about the The man who is being associated with Clarence Thomas, apparently paying for Clarence Thomas to take a bunch of flights or something like this. And the man has a bunch of Nazi paraphernalia. Now they've just in the article that I read, this billionaire donor or whatever, he has like a garden of evil where he like has statues like that are like original statues of Joseph Stalin and Lenin and I don't know if he's got a Hitler statue in there or not, but from what I understand, he's got like a garden with all of these mementos and stuff like that, and people are attacking him saying, "Oh, well, I would never keep things like that. I would never keep Nazi memorabilia and all that kind of stuff." And it's all just a bunch of leftist virtuoso grandstanding because they're all too poor to be able to afford awesome historical artifacts. I read this article in The Nation that was like ripping on this donor and saying these things ought to be in a museum, like they're trying to act like some kind of modern day Indiana Jones, which I'm kind of excited to see in the movie, by the way. Hopefully, it doesn't suck like the Kingdom of Crystal Skull. We'll talk about that in another time, but no, they're all just jealous because this rich billionaire could afford to buy all these historical artifacts, and they're trying to paint him like with a smear of, oh, he's a Nazi because he's got all this stuff. Well, does that make you a communist if you like own a Soviet rifle, which most gun collectors do? Yeah, like I do. I've also got a Nazi rifle myself. Oh no,
No,
no!
God!
Run
No,
screaming!
God,
He's
please,
got a
no!
rifle that was
No!
used in 1942. Oh no, it's terrible. It's terrifying. Also, must be a Nazi. Whatever. Leftists are idiots. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Nothing holy about the Dalai Lama, says Justin Peterson. Amen. Amen. Ironic. He said ironically. Good morning to Justin Peterson, Barney Stiles, Joni Rankin, Quest Fanning, Elizabeth Press, Caleb Vanderfeltz, John Kenyon, who's chiming in this morning with his comments saying Trump, Tulsi 2024. Can you imagine a VP debate between Tulsi and Kamala? I remember what happened last time. Holy crap, that was awesome. Not going to lie. Makes me proud to be an American.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to excuse me.
Yes, America is a nation that can be defined in that single word, Joe Biden. Thank you for that. All right, let's get to the top of the news. So, the reason why I thought this was an interesting story is because my buddy Mike Cernovich has been on a tear lately. Going on, everybody's attacking libertarians these days because, of course, libertarians are the cause of every single problem in the United States. The problems that we have are too much freedom. Everybody has now adopted, even the Trumpers have adopted the George W. Bush School of Freedom, which is that the problem that we have in America is too much freedom. I'm looking forward to having a discussion with you a little bit more about Cernovich's comments. But compared to Elon Musk, he's completely irrelevant, of course. And we'll talk about what Elon Musk has said and why I think Musk makes a really good point here at the top of the show right now. So, billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk said on Monday that we should make fentanyl illegal. Yes, and here's why. He says most fentanyl sellers are trying to survive under the same destructive racist system that replaced opium with morphine, then heroin, then fentanyl, the war on drugs. Let's give it up to Elon Musk here. Are we back under the black tar heroin, says Buddy Mansour. Yes, for consenting adults, but not for kids. Musk says, I think that we should legalize it. The probability of an overdose or a bad batch is greatly reduced if there is quality assurance and regulation. Duh, no kidding. Not that we didn't already know this, but Elon Musk saying it, it's kind of like when a hot woman says something, like it doesn't matter who said, if you said it, if you're the first person to say something, nobody's going to care. But if a 10 says exactly the same thing that you said, then everybody's like, oh, wow, this is brilliant. A hot woman said it. It must be true. Elon Musk is like the hot woman equivalent of that as a man. You got to be a billionaire as a man for people to listen to you. Musk said that the failed 1920s prohibition on alcohol was the justification for ending the so-called war on drugs. He says that alcohol is a quote, and I thought this was interesting. Listen to this. He says that alcohol is a legacy drug from olden times when we had no technology. Fascinating. He says prohibition of alcohol in the United States caused the greatest increase in organized crime in our history. How many times do we have to learn this lesson? One user responded that he used to agree with ending the drug war, but he cited San Francisco, California, as evidence that such an experiment has already failed. And of course, Mike Cernovich is coming out here with the same kind of bad take. essentially saying that San Francisco is, a sort of essentially a libertarian utopia. Here's what Mike Cernovich tweeted. Looks like today. Wow, just at like 12:37 a.m. He says drugs are de facto legal in San Francisco. This is Mike Cernovich, not Elon Musk. He says it's been tried now. Opioids are different. This is empirically proven. Okay, yeah, no shit. Drugs are different from each other. Death penalty. Excuse my language. Death penalty for fentanyl must be the next experiment. Jesus, Cernovich, I was drinking the Kool-Aid here. He says, I bet that goes way better than the lawbertarian, make all drugs legal in its utopia. Why must we always be plagued with retards in society? Why must we be ruled? And why must the loudest voices in the room always be the most retarded and the most stupid and the least educated? Do we always have to be that? Why? I'm sorry. I hate to be using such strong language here, but it's like again, I get into rooms with these people and I see these people, and it's not just online. Like I go to events and conferences and I see these people and I have conversations with them online. They're not geniuses, okay? The only thing that they're good at is getting likes and retweets and getting followers online. But when you actually have conversations, and you've seen me, right? You've watched my debates. I stand up on stage with these people who are lauded, who are heroes of the right and the left and all this stuff. And I get up there and they are mental midgets. I'm telling you, I am a musical theater major and a farm boy from Peculiar, Missouri. And I get up on stage and I make mincemeat of these people because they are so uneducated. And they're so indoctrinated. It's just it's amazing to watch. And then they'll go out and they'll find one study and say, oh, well, here's a study by one man who's a doctor, National Library of Medicine. Here's what Sedovich tweets. Did prohibition really work? Alcohol prohibition is a public health innovation. Well, what do you mean by work? Here, what are your standards by work? And there's one doctor who wrote the study. One. Now, it's not a team of doctors here, which is what you would typically have for peer-reviewed studies. Jack S. Blocker, PhD. The conventional view that national prohibition failed rests upon a historically flimsy base. The successful campaign to enact national prohibition was the fruit of a century long temperance campaign, experience of which led prohibitionists to conclude that a nationwide ban on alcohol was the most promising of the many strategies tried thus far. A sharp rise in consumption during the early 20th century seemed to confirm the bankruptcy of alternative alcohol programs. So essentially, what is working, right? Working is, according to this one doctor, found a golf tee in my pocket. Found a golf tee, is that working is that it reduced alcohol consumption. Did it reduce alcohol consumption? Only according to this one doctor. But I have more studies that have shown that it didn't, that actually alcohol consumption stayed the same during prohibition. So it depends on who you want to believe. And, maybe we're all just confirming our biases. And I have a bias, and I certainly am confirming it with the discussion about Elon Musk here. But you know what? Elon Musk is a genius. And isn't Cernovich himself like a former drug addict or a former alcoholic? No offense here, but I mean, it's like, who are you going to listen to? Elon Musk or Mike Cernovich? Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's up to you. What do you think? Send us a text 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. Let's hear your thoughts about this one. So, drugs are de facto legal in San Francisco. So, you take a communist state, which is essentially, or what you might call, what I like this term lately that people use, and I know that anarchists get angry when you use this term, but I've been reading about it lately, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Have you heard this phrase called anarcho-tyranny? I think that it really applies in places like San Francisco, and especially all the cities that were getting burned to the ground by Black Lives Matter during the pandemic. But anarcho tyranny essentially means that the government only enforces laws against its political opponents. And for everyone else, the people that it supports, it doesn't enforce the laws. San Francisco is an example of this, an anarcho tyranny. If you own a Rite Aid, or for example, I saw did you see the story that Whole Foods was in San Francisco for a year, and the store moved out because of all of the rampant crime, and they can't. People can just go in there and steal up to $1,000 worth of goods from a store, and then just walk out. I mean, I saw a video the other day of children, not even like teenagers, some of them, children stealing willy-nilly from shops out in San Francisco, California, just running out the door with all of these goods and services. That is libertarianism to you? I mean, again, I hate to have to deal with the least of us in our society. He's got 1 million followers. He must be genius. Everybody, a lot of people listen to him. Well, that's the argument by democracy, isn't it? Right? That if the majority of people think something or believe something, then that must be true. But isn't that what we learned during the pandemic? What a mistake that was. Aren't we opposed to democracy? Isn't it more likely that the minority of people are probably the ones who have got the hidden truth that the majority of people most likely are not able to see? Isn't that what we sort of think we are in these days, surrounded by idiots and morons and people who want to rule us and control us, and authoritarians on left and right? Isn't that really where we are? Isn't the truth more likely to be something in the middle, dwelling in the shades of gray and the nuance, rather than in the boring, stale black and white Star Wars version of things that conservatives and liberals like to paint things as? Not everybody that we disagree with is George Soros, aka Darth Vader. Not everybody on the other side is Luke Skywalker or Princess Leia. You're not heroes, okay? The world is not Star Wars. Stop living in a fantasy world. The reality is the world that we live in is a world where drugs exist. Drugs are dangerous, and one of the only ways to protect ourselves from them is to legalize them all. I say legalize. And so does Elon Musk. I'm basically Elon Musk. I'm basically the Elon Musk of morning talk shows. The Wake Up America Show. We'll be back with more at the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit apforlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. How are you feeling today? Really? All the way out there in Boston, Justin? How are you doing down there in Southwest Missouri, Robbie Thurman, or in St. Louis, Anna Marie? How are things for you, Burt Crash, here in mid-Missouri? Mary Kramer? Mary, you live here in Jefferson City with us, don't you? Quest Fanning all the way from Brooklyn, New York. And where's Rare Camellia at today? Is she in St. Louis or is she in Southwest Missouri? Well, wherever you're at today, we're grateful to have you here as a guest on the Wake Up America show. Thanks so much for tuning in. I wanted to show you something really cool before I start the next segment. I'm going to pull my shoe off here. Kind of weird, awkward, but go deal with me here for just a moment. Did you see these? The pictures that I posted of these? Check this out. I thought you would kind of like these. These are a new product that I designed for apforlibertyshop.com. And yeah, it's a commercial, but I'm also just kind of really proud of it. These are sneakers, patriotic sneakers, with American flags on them. Here's the deal. These are going to be what you're going to wear on the 4th of July. And let me tell you why. They're super comfortable. I would compare these in quality to my Adidas sneakers. No joke. They're as comfortable as my mainstream brand name sneakers that I wear. And there's some things to these that actually make them really unique because nobody else at the 4th of July barbecue is going to have these. Yeah, you've got your typical, it's kind of like a grunge American flag design, right? So it's not all perfectly white all the way up there. It's kind of like a grunge style, which is good because, when it gets a little bit dirty and stuff like that, you don't want it to look really awkward when it's like perfect white, so that wouldn't work. So I made it like a grunge American flag, which is kind of cool. And it's got the flag there on the tongue. You've got the stars on the tongue and then a little bit on the back there too. But here's the really awesome thing about these shoes. If you get them at AP for Liberty Shop, they've got I don't know if you can see that. There you go. Or maybe I can flip over to camera 2. Maybe camera 2 will give you a little better look at it. Can you see that? It's got the AP logo. Pretty sweet, huh? Well, anyways, highly recommend it. I've got these in men's and women's at AP for Liberty Shop. And if you're like, oh, I've got too many sneakers, ladies, I've got 2 different types of ladies shoes, and one is like the canvas kind of boat shoe. That's the similar design. So we sold a few of these, and I'd love to get some in your house. So check it out. If you want to get something with like the AP logo on there, American flag shoes, you want to order them now because they take a little while to print and to ship. So that way you'll have them by the 4th of July. They arrived like sooner than I expected so that Stephanie could have them for our trip to Japan. But I highly recommend that if you're thinking, oh, I definitely would wear those at my 4th of July barbecue this year, and you're going to want to break them in, then go to apforlibertyshop.com. Are they as comfy as a Sketcher? Absolutely. Yeah, I can. I will testify to the quality of the sneakers. So if you're interested in getting a pair of American flag sneakers and you want to be able to like wear them for the 4th of July, again, highly recommend that you get them. Order them now. So go to apforlibertyshop.com and check those out. Again, very, very comfy. Okay, let's see. What are we talking about today? All right, this weekend, the FBI actually did something of value for once. The FBI recently warned consumers against using free public charging stations, saying that crooks have managed to hijack public chargers that can infect devices with malware. That's software that can give hackers access to your phone or your tablet or your computer. And I know it's really tempting when you go to the airport, for example, if you've got those charging stations. But here's what I recommend. So for Stephanie on the trip, I bought her a gift of one of those portable chargers. And the portable chargers now are wicked powerful. The batteries that you can use to plug your phone in when you're on the go, and the benefit, of course, is that they're portable and you can take them anywhere that you want. Are really powerful now and can give you like a full day's charge. Now, I'm a power user on my phone, and I'm constantly playing games, and I've got like 20 apps open and doing social media and texting and typing and doing stuff. I probably use more data in a single day than all of the rest of Jefferson City combined. So if you're like me, if you're a power user, you're like, okay, I'm definitely going to run out of juice about a third of the way through the day, like I typically do. And then you find yourself at one of these public charging stations or wherever you're at a conference or something like that. Just say no. And the reason is that it's not, you may say to yourself, oh, well, whoever this company has set up this charging station, or Delta Airlines set up this charging station, they're not going to do something to try and harm me. No, it's not. The problem is not the Delta, the company, right? The problem is that these scammers have figured out how to hack into these terminals to be able to steal your personal data from your phone whenever you plug into them. So this is really good advice for you guys to take going forward. Don't use those free charging stations in airports or hotels, or especially shopping centers where it's really easy for somebody to be able to install that malware, because now these bad actors have figured out ways to use public USB ports to introduce malware and monitoring software into these devices. So carry your own charger and your USB cord and use an electrical outlet instead. I've got to go to a commercial break. Here's why. Because Vance Ginn is going to come up. I got to go get Vance Ginn. He's an economist, worked with Donald Trump in the White House. We're going to talk to him about central bank digital currencies and the state of the housing market when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here. And we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country. And You know, the thing, but hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. How are you feeling today on a Tuesday? Oh, really? You guys are that excited? Jeez, I'm still kind of waking up, getting my coffee going. But it's time for big brain moments anyway. My friend Vance Ginn, he is a former economist at the Office of Management and Budget under Donald Trump and a senior fellow at Young Americans for Liberty, is joining us now to talk about central bank digital currencies. Good morning, Vance. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, good morning, Austin. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Vance. Central bank digital currencies. It's been a hot topic amongst politicos and people who are insiders. But for people who are just maybe they're tapping their toes in and they don't know a whole lot about economics or about money or things like that, what is a central bank digital currency?
Well, Austin, it has been the talk of the town by a lot of folks, especially in government, not only here in the United States, but across the globe and many different countries. And it essentially is a digital currency, somewhat like Bitcoin and others, but instead of it being privately run and have an end date at some point, or at least the amount that they're going to print or have not print, but have an additional currency that's going to come out there and the amount of dollars, the central bank will back them. So basically, it's a way for the Federal Reserve, our central bank now, which has done a poor job with our fiat currency, known as the U.S. dollar, that's backed by government debt. In this case, would be backed by, potentially the blockchain, which I think is a great form of innovation, has a lot of good areas for expansion and use by Americans in many ways over time. But I don't think this is a good idea for government to be involved. I mean, we've seen how they've devalued the dollar over time, where I think it's down like 97% compared to whenever the Federal Reserve was put in place in 1913. Just a massive amount of devaluation. And they should, and I don't want them to get involved with our digital currencies either. Not only could they have more information about you that's on the blockchain that's directly controlled by, or at least in some sense controlled by the Federal Reserve and the government, but it also means that they have access to all of your transactions and everything else. And I know if some people want to move to a cashless society, which, look, Austin, I don't use a lot of cash, to be honest with you. But at the same time, I want there to be access to cash so that if the government has some sort of form of way that they want to go around of tracking my transactions or removing me from the economy, I want to have some sort of exchange, some sort of medium exchange that I can use. And that may not happen if there's a central bank digital currency. And so I think there's a number of reasons, economically, philosophically, practically, that we just don't need one.
Now, Vance, you're a smart guy. I'm just kind of a layman when it comes to economics. So help me understand this. One of the things that we as libertarians kind of accuse the central bank currently is, of printing an infinite amount of cash. That whenever the Federal Reserve wants to, print more cash, all they have to do is create more zeros in bank accounts at the Federal Reserve. So, I mean, how much would that really be any different than what we have right now? I mean, if the central bank digital currency is infinite, how does that really make a difference between our current system?
Well, I think it makes a difference in the sense that it will be on the blockchain, and you'll have the transactions that be out there to the Fed. which look, I mean, the Fed is an independent agency, but it was created by Congress. And so at the end of the day, it's backstopped by Congress and by the taxpayer who are funding what's going on there. There are fees that go into the Federal Reserve from the banks across the nation. And so all these things connected make it to where I think that there's privacy issues that go along with what Americans are doing with their money. But to your point, kind of to drive that home, is that the fiat currency system we have today with the dollar backed by government debt. So the $31 trillion of national debt, a lot of that's held publicly, but in the sense of things, the Federal Reserve has $9 trillion, nearly $9 trillion on their balance sheet today. A lot of that is Treasury securities, some of his mortgage-backed securities and other things. And so the Fed just prints money out of thin air by saying, look, we're going to put some money on a balance sheet, but that balance sheet isn't as tight knit as what you would have on a blockchain. So in that sense, I think that's why some people are excited about a central bank digital currency, because of the blockchain technology and everything else. But as Americans, as individual citizens, I just don't think this is a good idea, because you're going to have the government, right? The Federal Reserve more involved with all these transactions, that is providing more information, less individual security for individuals in the process. And so I think, to your point, you're still printing a lot of money by the Federal Reserve. But with blockchain or Bitcoin, some of these other sort of digital currencies, they say, look, we're going to stop the amount of supply at an endpoint at a certain amount. And what that does is that makes it more scarce. One of the problems with a fiat currency system is the lack of scarcity. But in economics, the number one principle is that there is scarcity. And in politics, what they do is try to forget that first principle of economics, that there's scarcity. And that's what they're trying to do again here with a central bank digital currency that they've already done, and kind of wrecked the dollar in the process with the fiat currency system. So there's something that, we shouldn't head in that direction.
You're just tuning into the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. I'm speaking to former senior economist under the Trump administration at the Office of Management and Budget, Vance Ginn. He's also a senior fellow at Young Americans for Liberty, talking about central bank digital currencies. If you like what you're hearing this morning, make sure you click like on that stream, or join us if you're joining us over on Rumble. Make sure that you give us a rumble and drop a comment and introduce yourself. We'd love to know more about our rumblers this morning, as we're trying to grow that network. Vince, could you see a scenario where, if central bank digital currencies are produced, and I think it's probably inevitable that they will, would they try and outlaw cash?
I think that's a big concern, and I think it's something that they would likely do. I mean, given the government, given how much control that these banks want to have, and given control that many politicians want to have, is that they'll want to ban cash, go to a cashless society. China is already talking about that, and they're also interested in a central bank digital currency. Other countries have as well. You've heard some of that in the United States by some individuals. And so I think that there is this kind of movement to a cashless society. And what is the concern with that? I mean, I think the big concern is privacy, our individual security, our liberty, right? Of the things that we're able to do with our money. I mean, at the end of the day, we've talked about before, Austin, I want to end the Fed. I don't think that there should be a central bank. And so if we are doubling down on another way that there should be a central bank through a digital currency or a fiat currency system, we're heading in the wrong direction. And the reason why is because they're manipulating the overall economy, whether it be by printing more money that's not based on market activity through a fiat currency system, or they're printing money through not market activity through a digital currency. Either way, they're printing money based on their whims, not based on what should happen in the marketplace. And so I'm hopeful that one day we can get to it in the Fed, but if not, we need a rule, something that's going to hold them accountable. And unfortunately, a central bank digital currency will not be that. I just don't think that that's the direction that we should go. Again, why would we double down on failure?
Well, you can certainly make the case, but I was already convinced, Vance. What about our listeners? You can send us in a text at 573-319-1586. Again, the text line is open at 573-319-1586. Vance, I'd like to switch subjects with you, if you don't mind. I read an article yesterday called Boomer Home Buying Bonanza, and the subheading was "Millennials are desperate to buy a home, but cash flush boomers are standing in their way." Property is one of the only, I guess real estate is one of the only types of property, Vance, where owning it is if I own property, I can exclude you from using it. It's not like Xboxes or, cameras or whatever. If I own a camera, you can also own a camera. But if I own real estate, I can exclude you from using that real estate. So is it really a situation of a sort of generational warfare that where millennials, who have, struggled through, the Great Recession of the early 2000s, to today, are unable to be able to get into the real estate market because the boomers have bought up all of the property? Or is that just kind of something that's been foisted on us by, the Marxists who want us to have like a, sort of intergenerational warfare, or something like, in order to inspire revolution?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fight back that's going on by millennials and others as they have an affordability crisis, whether it be in the housing sector with rent soaring, how the housing prices in general, mortgage rates up, property taxes up. One of the things that I'm hopeful for in a lot of places is, to reduce or eliminate property taxes. Because look, if you're paying property taxes, you're renting from the government forever. You're never actually going to own your home. And so I think that's something to look at. But when you're thinking about the amount of money and wealth that's across the income spectrum based on different generations, the one that has the most wealth are the boomers. And so they have the most access to capital in this sense in order to purchase up those homes, whether it be vacation homes or homes that they want to rent or something else, compared to the millennials who are really just getting into their career, or have been in their career for a little bit. I'm actually a millennial, I guess one of the older ones of 1981. But you have this period where a lot of those folks that are millennials are just getting into the economy, getting into their career and getting income, and so that leaves them with less cash and capital available to purchase those homes compared to the boomers. And so you have this kind of divide, this struggle that's going on that I think happens all the time within society. It's just a little more focused right now. And a big part of that, Austin, I think, is because after the shutdowns and COVID and everything else, a lot of the millennials lost their job and then they stayed home with their parents. Right. And so now they don't have the productivity, they don't have the experience and everything else to get those higher paying jobs, to get, the house that they want. Whereas a lot of the boomers stayed with their jobs. A lot of them worked from home, and those that didn't retired. And so you had a lot of changes that happened here recently within the economy, from the bad shutdowns that went in place. And this is another one of the results, the consequences of what happened during that period of time. The other thing I would say is that it goes back to the Fed, is that they kept interest rates so low and pumped so much money into the economy that it made it really cheap to buy homes. And so who was the ones that were going to have more capital in order to get and lower opportunity cost of buying those homes? Were going to be more of the boomers. And so they could go out and do that. And so that also contributed to this kind of inequality, if you will, between the haves and the have-nots of those who can afford a home and those who can't. And in this case, boomers versus millennials.
I'm reading this article. It says that between July of 2021 and 2022, boomers were the largest share of home buyers for the first time since 2012. Boomers purchased 39% of all homes that sold during that span, up from 29% the year before. Millennials, on the other hand, saw their market share shrink to just 28%, down from 43% the year prior. Yeah, the boomers have cash. And so the boomers can go in and they can make these housing purchases in cash because cash is king. More people are more willing to sell houses to people who can sling cash. So, I mean, is there any kind of a policy solution to something like this, Vance? I mean, we're looking at our generation, whom you and I are representatives of to a certain extent. I mean, how do we advocate for the people of our generation to be able to become homeowners? What policies could anyone possibly do? Or is this just the kind of thing where, I mean, how do you say something like this kindly? You have to wait for the boomers, I guess, to age out, which, the inevitable end of that is, unpleasant. But is that really what we're looking at?
Part of this is that the boomers are going to be a larger share of the overall population. I mean, we're talking about those that were born, during right after World War II, during that period. And so a lot of them are, like you said, getting older, the later part of their career, going into retirement. So they're buying other homes. And so as a share of the overall population, they're also growing as many more of them are retiring. And we're seeing that kind of go into the cost of Social Security, these quote unquote entitlements, which we're not entitled to anything, but Social Security and Medicare, I mean, is a major cost because there are more boomers, more retirees compared to the people that are paying into the system. And this is another one of the kind of consequences of this of these shares of the population in the housing market, to where there are many more of them and compared to millennials. And so they're going to have a larger share of the population. This article talking about those numbers, though, it is interesting to see a smaller share of these millennials who are buying homes. And I think it's because when I'm looking at the data is that they're being priced out. They're just being priced out of the homes. I mean, there was a soar. So you talked about from 2021 to 2022. What happened during that period? Well, we had very low interest rates, basically 0% interest rates. The Fed didn't start raising interest rates until, latter part of 2021, early 2022, from 0% up to 5% today. So now we see higher interest rates. We see higher mortgage rates, higher car loan rates, and all those things. But for a long time, it was essentially 0%, where you could get a mortgage rate of below 3% in some cases. And so when you do all that and you have all the money that was in place and you have these changes that happen in the economy and you had soaring housing values across the country where prices were up 50%, 60%, even more than that in some places over that year, it priced out a lot of those millennials that those boomers could afford. And so in some sense, this just makes economic sense that based on prices, based on the incentives that were in place throughout the economy, that a large and the population shares, that the boomers would have a larger share of the market of housing than millennials. So I'm not sure that there is a policy solution. What I would say is that the policy solutions would be more about freedom and liberty. Let's stop zoning. All these zoning regulations, what it does, it restricts supply and drives up the price higher than it otherwise would be. You have the Federal Reserve, which is not acting by a rule, but acting by discretion and putting so much liquidity and money in the marketplace. And as long as it's going to be in place, which we should end the Fed, I'll say that again. But until that happens, we should be based on a rule so we can have expectations in the marketplace for people to follow. And instead of all this nonsense of just putting money into the economy and devaluing our currency. And so I think between the zoning regulations, the Federal Reserve's actions of what they've been putting into the economy, and then finding ways to cut government spending and stop adding so much government debt, those are the types of things that I would come from a free market solution there process to really finding a way to solve this problem. And ultimately, it's got to be up to the responsibility of individuals. I mean, millennials are going to make the decisions they are. Boomers are going to make the decisions they are. Let's just make sure that government's not getting in the way, because as we know, Austin, they are too often.
Way too often. Vance Ginn, Senior Fellow at Young Americans for Liberty. Vance, thanks so much for joining us. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go?
Well, Austin, it's always a pleasure to be with you. You can find me at Vance Ginn on Twitter. I also have the Let People Prosper show that I do. It's all major platforms. And then with Young Americans for Liberty, you can find us online and also on Twitter and other places as well. So please check us out.
Ellie and Dorson recommend our friends over at Young Americans for Liberty. Vance, thank you very much for being generous with your time today. Thanks for your insights. We appreciate you.
Thanks a lot, Austin.
Thanks very much. I got some good news for you. First of all, real quick question. Did you like Vance Ginn? Send us a text. Let us know what you think about Vance at 573-319-1586. And also, I wanted to let people know, it's Todd in Minnesota. Haven't seen you in a while, Todd. Hope you're doing well. Good morning. And good morning to John Rail, Joni Rankin, and Robbie Thurman, all of our friends over there. I just hadn't seen Todd in Minnesota in quite some time. Here's the good news. Prices of gold went down. Fell below $2,000 on Monday. This is your chance. If you have been listening to my advertisements saying, hey, Austin, I definitely want to invest in gold. It's a little pricey right now. Now is the time to get a good deal and to call my friends over at Lear Capital or visit them at learaustin.com. That's 1-800-885-2175. I don't want to say that too quickly because people kind of complain, Austin, you say the phone number way too fast. You say the stuff too fast. I'm sorry. My grandma always used to say that to me, that I talked way too fast. Okay. Well, for grandma's sake. Grandma, I love you. Looking down on me from heaven. The phone number today to call our friends over at Lear Capital is 1-800-885-2175. That's 1-800-885-2175. The price of gold, it's not going to go down forever. It went down below $2,000 yesterday. The spot gold fell nearly 1% to $19.88 per ounce as of yesterday afternoon. Now's a good time to do it. It did on the back of the news of strong employment numbers. That's good news. We like to see that. Now is a great time for you to get into the gold market. Make an investment. Stephanie and I are looking at taking a part of her IRA that she has right now and investing it into a gold IRA. So if you're interested in learning more about that process, they will send you a free gold information packet. So there's no obligation to buy. If you give them a call, just say, hey, Austin sent me. I'd like to learn more about what Lear Capital has to offer, maybe about their IRA programs. So even if you don't want to invest, if you want to invest in gold, but you don't want to hold gold and silver because you're afraid you might lose it or whatever, or the feds might come and raid you because that's what they do, then check them out at learaustin.com. Get a gold and silver packet from them. They'll tell you more information about how you can invest your portion of your retirement into gold and silver. Again, that phone number is 1-800-885-2175. I'm going to take a real quick break. Don't go away. When I get back, I've got a video of the Dalai Lama telling some kid to suck his tongue. It's the weirdest crap I've seen all week. And it's only Tuesday when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Good morning to the Cantina crew. This is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. And I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
Would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Well, the Dalai Lama has apologized after video emerged showing the spiritual leader kissing a child on the lips and then asking him to suck his tongue at an event in northern India.
No, God, please,
Yeah.
no, no.
It's just as weird as you might imagine. Take a look. Okay. It couldn't get any worse, could it?
And suck my tongue.
Oh, okay. That's a little weird, don't you think? Yeah. It's giving me some of these vibes here.
Look at her. She looks like she's 19 years old, sitting there with her, like a little lady with her legs crossed.
You know, like this
Right next to me. There you go. And then we're gonna have.
There you go.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, and the people in the back, you can spread out a little bit.
Let's give me some of those vibes.
Welcome to the front row. Do you remember what I told you? No, not smile. No date till you're 30. Hey, Angel, how old are you? You're 12. What's your name? How are you? The problem is, you know, you guys, you got a hard time. You know what I mean? All right, sister. I like kids better than people.
Yeah. Can we get some over here? Okay.
Grandpa's one of those guys.
That's nice of you to say.
No, I'm not saying. He knows.
Thanks, good God. I saw this great response video to it yesterday. Let me share.
So I'm keeping this video nice and brief because every time I've tried to record it, I've said things that's likely going to end me in jail. Like I'm going to end up in jail. So I'm just going to keep it nice and straightforward. I've seen that video of the Dalai Lama asking that little boy to suck his tongue. He kissed the boy on the lips. The boy asked for a hug because obviously he's meeting the Dalai Lama. He's like, oh, you know, I think the boy asked for a hug and then the Dalai Lama kisses him on the lips. That's not your child. And I know some people even feel a particular way about kissing their own child on the lips. So that's a whole thing. So talk less of the child not even being yours. And then you say to the child that the child should suck your tongue. And you were doing that in public. So what are you doing in private?
Yeah.
There's something to be said about religious leaders, spiritual leaders, people who are in the royal family, whatever, and the way that they get away with molesting children. And they can pay people off or they can apologize and they get to move right on.
Yeah.
No more. No more.
Amen, sister.
That apology will not suffice. And you better hope that it's not somebody like me that finds you and has to hold you accountable. Disgusting behavior.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Let's give her a round of applause. That was good stuff. Yeah, really weird, right? The Babylon Bee, though, had a great article. The Dalai Lama, this is from the Babylon Bee, okay? Satire, not a real article. The Dalai Lama was inundated with requests from public libraries to lead story hours. In the days after the disturbing footage surfaced of the Dalai Lama engaging in grossly inappropriate conduct with a child, the Buddhist leader has been inundated with requests from public libraries across the U.S. and Europe to read kids in special Dalai Lama story hours. As soon as we saw the clip, we knew we needed to have this guy reading stories to vulnerable kids at one of our library locations, said Jason Kuksma, the director of the Toledo Public Library. Hilarious, hilarious, hilarious. All right, it's 7:59. I gotta go get Hannah Cox. It's time for her to come on and talk about how being based and red-pilled is going to put you on an FBI watch list. I'm on all of them anyway. We'll talk about why when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Donald Trump and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Step right up, ladies and gents, to learn about the coolest president yet. He's not just any old prez, he's Calvin Coolidge, and boy oh boy is he different from the rest. He was quiet as a mouse, but don't you underestimate his power. He knew how to handle money, and he didn't waste an hour. He cut taxes, lowered debt, and balanced the budget with ease. No wonder the Roaring Twenties brought such prosperity and peace. But don't take my word for it. Grab a copy of Calvin the Coolest President and see for yourself. It's a children's book that'll make you smile and help your little ones learn about wealth. You can find it on Amazon Kindle or get your hands on a paperback at apforlibertyshop.com. So come on down and get yourself a copy of the book that's making waves all around town. You won't regret it, so get ready to be floored because Calvin Coolidge, well, folks, he really scored.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
Any real-world experience.
it's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. Do it anyway. You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Happy Tuesday. Today is the 11th of April. Have you paid your taxes yet? Well, the mafia is waiting to collect their money. It's almost the 15th. You've already paid your taxes, right? Paid your protection money, right? Which would be better, a mafia or a government? I'll let you fight that out in the comments. Well, most of you already know the answer to that question, though, because you're both based and red pill, which makes you something of an online extremist. What? What do you mean? Maybe we should talk to the head of online extremism herself. She is the co-founder of basedpolitics.com, which pretty much makes her a target for the FBI. Hannah Cox is joining us right now. Good morning, Hannah. Thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Good morning, Austin. Good to be back with you. Good to see you back in the States.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Hannah. Glad to have you here today. When I saw this story yesterday, I was like, there is only one guest who you can have for a story like this. What is this? Being based in red pill now going to get me on a watch list as if I wasn't already on one?
Right. Apparently we're in the doghouse, but I think we already were for some time. But of course, my website and show is called Based Politics. It's been around for a few years, and it looks like all of a sudden the FBI has found a way to label me an extremist, to which I don't even push back. I think that I am an extremist. I think the founders were extremists. I think anybody that proclaims that people have a right to their own life, liberty, and property is an extremist in the grand scheme of things throughout history. I think that anybody who says all men are created equal is an extremist in the grand scheme of history, and even globally to this day. Based as a whole, of course, does not mean what the FBI is alleging that it means, which is they're trying to tie it pretty much exclusively to incel and racist communities online. Not to say that there aren't some of those pockets that try to use the moniker too, but based is pretty widely used, and it means being upfront, being oneself, owning what you think, saying what's true, whether it's politically correct or not. And that's why my organization is called Based, and we stand for free markets and limited government and individual liberty, and we'll continue to, because I think, if anything, we need extremists in the vein of liberty right now to fight back against our corrupt government and heinous agencies within it, like the FBI.
Oh, yeah, that's why we bring you on this show. Let's give Hannah a round of applause there. Oh, yeah, studio audience is loving it today. Glad you guys are all in such a good mood. Make sure that you click like on that stream to help us spread the based message of red-pilled politics at the Wake Up America show. So apparently we found out about this because of the Heritage Foundation's oversight project, which I had never even heard of before. But this is something that was just uncovered relatively recently, I guess.
That's right. So it was a Freedom of Information Act that the Heritage Foundation, one of their organizations, basically got a hold of, and the New York Post seemed to break the story yesterday. So it started circulating online pretty widely. I too had no idea the Heritage Foundation was involved in these kinds of things, so I was glad to see it. I think that, from what we learned over about the FBI just in the past couple of months, it's getting pretty bleak up in there. And it's not that this agency has some stellar track record. Let's remember that this is the agency that tried to get Martin Luther King Jr. to kill himself, literally writing letters threatening him and blackmailing him to try to get him to kill himself back in the day. They were behind things like the Red Scare and labeling people on government lists if they thought they believed in communism. So they have no great track record here. But in recent years, you've seen them do things like try to have parents who go and protest at school boards for their own kids' education labeled as domestic terrorists. We can increasingly see that they have been responsible for numerous wrongful convictions across the country. They are just a really unethical, untrustworthy agency that I think should be disbanded. And this is really just kind of the latest thing in that vein. I think it's pretty clear what their intentions are. They know that when you say based or you say red pill, these are things that most commonly are used to refer to right-wing ideologies, not extremist ideologies within right-wing ideology, but simply limited government, free markets, individual liberty. These are the kind of concepts most people are talking about when they use the terms. But by trying to include everybody who uses these words as extremist or lumping them in with these incel and kind of seedy pockets of the alt-right, what they want to do is to be able to use the full weight of the federal government and the FBI to come after you on a whim, should it suit their needs, and then to be able to say, well, look, they were, using these terms. This is proof that they were involved in these really nefarious online communities, and hopefully that nobody will blink an eye when they come after your basic liberties for that reason.
Yeah, I noticed that one of the terms that they focused in on and was the term Chad, which they put in their glossary. And here's how they defined a Chad. They said it's a race-specific term, which I didn't know because honestly, I've seen Chads and I produce T-shirts with Chads on them of all different races. But they say it's a race-specific term used to describe the idealized version of a male who is very successful at getting sexual and romantic attention from women, later noting incels unsuccessfully compete against chads for attention. Hannah, wouldn't you just love to be in the room of the FBI when they're sitting down trying to figure out define what the hell a chat is?
Right. And what's their intel? Like, how are they going about getting this information? I just picture them sending these agents into like Nick Fuentes' group chat and trying to decipher like what's happening in the comments between these weirdos. It's actually quite funny and such a waste of time because, again, look, there are small pockets of the internet that are fringy alt-right and incel weirdos who do use these terms and that are like seedy people. But even then, I mean, these are people who live in their mom's basement. They're not even competent enough to figure out how to pay rent. I don't think they're a huge threat to the government. You know, the fact that they're trying to label them as these like dangerous extremists, like, I don't know. I'd like to see them hold down a job and get a girlfriend first. Like, I'm not that worried about them.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm your host, Austin Peterson. I'm speaking to our friend Hannah Cox. She is the co-founder of basepolitics.com. She's the perfect guest to be talking about this story that broke yesterday about how the FBI documents associate internet slang like based and red pill with extremism. I mean, but let's be honest here, Hannah. These people in the FBI, they want to target people in right-wing communities broadly. They don't care how broad a brush they paint with, because in my opinion, and I would be curious to see if you agree, in my opinion, the FBI really is just the enforcement wing of the Democratic Party these days.
I mean, apparently I think what they mostly want to be able to do is to censor these people on Twitter. I think that is probably their end goal. And it's so ridiculous that this is what our tax dollars go to. When people say you pay taxes to live in a civilized society. No, you pay taxes so your government can torture puppies in foreign labs. And so your government can pay the FBI to come censor Americans on Twitter because they use new internet slang that they don't quite understand. It is absolutely ridiculous. I don't think that even if there were actual violent threats, the FBI has certainly not shown any proclivity for being able to prevent or solve them. In fact, usually they're found amongst the ranks of people carrying them out. So I'm not sure the FBI solves any more violence than it actually provokes and starts with its little undercover agendas that it does. So I have absolutely no faith in them. I don't know what the point is. I think they're a joke of an agency. And, you know, for me, as somebody who's more of a libertarian, really kind of politically homeless when it comes to an actual tribe, it's been really refreshing to at least see the right wake up to that fact over the past couple of years with their ridiculous back the blue no matter who nonsense. Like, no, the cops that you were stumping for are people like these in the FBI, and they work for the government. They do not work for you. And there are many problems within the entire policing infrastructure in this country, but especially when you get to the federal level. And it's time that Republicans wake up on this and get serious about their limited government values, because when you give the authorities unchecked power, this is the inevitable end result. They're going to come after you and your basic civil liberties. They're not there to protect you. They're there to protect the government.
Yeah, I agree with you, Hannah. It was certainly an eye opener to many during the pandemic when we saw them, shutting down churches and places of worship where a lot of conservatives did, I guess you might say, become red pilled. But it is unfortunate, though, how so many on the right who started out as libertarians like ourselves have embraced more authoritarian ideologies. And I think a lot of it has to do with simple frustration that, that they didn't see the kinds of results that they wanted to see from political elections in such a short amount of time. And they sort of have abandoned the ideology. I mean, we're sort of, as libertarians, being attacked from all sides, not only from the left, but we're getting attacked now from the right as the cause of many of the problems that we have in mainstream society, whether it's immigration or whether it's drugs in San Francisco. I mean, I think I saw Mike Cernovich, like just this morning, was complaining that San Francisco is essentially a libertarian utopia because drugs are de facto legal there. And, that's the policies that you'd see under libertarianism. It has been fascinating to see so many who were previously on our side have really turned against us in recent years, Hannah.
Yeah, but I think I can explain that. And honestly, it comes down to the fact that they don't really know how to win. And I think that that's sad for them because as a whole, I still get incredible wins at the state level every year. I think that we can still build tremendous coalitions around libertarian ideas. I think they're vastly popular. I think they're ethical. I think they're the smartest way to structure a society. Honestly, when you try to compare San Francisco to a libertarian utopia, I think you must be super uneducated about what any of these terms mean, if that's what you truly think, because obviously the policies in place, even when it comes to the approach to drugs in San Francisco, are not what libertarians would do under their ideal world. But, that being said, while I think that people who have put their faith in elections have been quite disappointed, there's a reason for that. And that's because Republicans only talk like libertarians to get elected. And then they get in there and they don't actually do what they say they're going to do. They aren't actually free market. They aren't actually limited government. They aren't actually for individual liberty. And instead, they basically push the same BS that progressives were pushing 20 years ago. And so things keep getting worse and worse. And they're losing the culture war on top of that because they do this weird trad social thing where they want to force their religious views on people and make them act like they want to in their, religious communities. And that's very unpopular. So yes, Republicans are consistently losing. They're losing the culture and they're losing the policy battles and they're losing the economy, but it's not because they've tried libertarianism and it didn't work. It's because they're liars that don't actually go in there and do what they say they're going to do and instead just work basically to keep themselves in power. And I think that that's what people should be waking up to. And that's the real culprit of the problem. It's not the message, it's not the ideas, it's that we've had really bad enforcers of those ideas or messengers who are carrying them who don't actually mean what they say.
Hannah, I've known you for like what? How long have we known each other? Like 10 years, would you say, or so?
We met at Rand Paul's campaign announcement for president in Louisville, Kentucky. So when was that? 2015?
So that was what? 2015? Was that 2015? Wow. So almost 10 years we've known each other now. And all this time that I have known you, I don't think I have ever heard you say something once that I disagree with, Hannah. It blows my mind how much we are on the same page here. Hannah, we're running short of time on this segment. Tell us a little bit about your Based Politics website and what you guys are working on these days.
Well, thanks, Austin. I feel the same way about you and love having you out there as a voice in the wilderness. I think it's always encouraging to see everything you have and that you come out with. But Based Politics is something Brad Palumbo and Jack Hunter and I started a little over a year ago. It's a nonprofit, but it is essentially going to be a multimedia company. We strongly feel that where media is going is into influencer media. It's online marketing. It's TikTok. It's Reddit. People are not getting their news from TV. They're not even getting it from articles anymore. They're getting it from short form video and podcasts and YouTube videos. And so we are bringing what I would call sort of infotainment with a political edge to those platforms and working to actually reach a wide apparatus of people. We're not preaching to the choir. And like I've said here, we're not really tied to either political party. We are based. We're going to say what's true, no matter what people think. If they're friends, if they're enemies, we're going to stick with the truth. We're going to stick with free markets and individual liberty. And so if people want to get content in that vein, and if they want to be truly informed on what's going on, we work really hard to bring people the truth behind a lot of the policies going down right now. So they can find us at based-politics.com is the website, but you can also look us up on multiple platforms that are Hannah Cox or Brad Palumbo.
Check her out at based-politics.com. That's based-politics.com. Hannah Cox. Hannah, you're awesome. Thanks so much for being based and red pilled. Watch out for the FBI. We'll see you again real soon.
Thanks, Austin.
Thanks very much. What did you think of Hannah Cox? Send us a text at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. Hey, do you want to piss off the FBI? Check out my Caucasian shirt over there. Look at that. You see what's on that? Look at the logo that's on the Caucasian's shirt. What could that be? It's oh my God. No. It's a Chad meme. No. If you want to get on an FBI watch list, get yourself a Caucasian shirt. We have more than one type of Chad. It's not just race-based. We've got white Chads. We've got black Chads. They're the minorities team. We've also got Mexicans. And what other kind of Chads do we have? Oh, Indians. Yeah, I think I need to make some more Chad shirts. Different races, different cultures. Christian Chads. I need to make an atheist Chad, but he's going to have a fedora. So when we get back, I have no idea what we're going to talk about. Why? Because I wasn't paying attention. Oh, does owning Nazi memorabilia make you a Nazi? We'll talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold,
and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, you know, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
Thank you for watching the Wake Up America show with my dad. Today, I'd like to share with you 3 reasons why you should visit Dad's online store at apforlibertyshop.com. Number 1, you can get exclusive freedom-loving merch designed by AP himself or me mom, Steffi. Liberty Laura has made some designs as well, and blimey, they are great. Number 2, most of these products are so wicked that they aren't even allowed to be advertised on Facebook or Instagram. Modern machine guns and a proper keychain. Plus, our Grover Cleveland t-shirt is so spicy apparently that leftists on Facebook specifically banned it from appearing on the website. Number 3, you're supporting liberty lovers just like you. Spend your money where you earn it, and you help me Pops build a community that supports what you believe. Bloody hell, this commercial is running too long. Gotta run. Bye now. Don't forget to visit apforlibertyshop.com. That's apforlibertyshop.com.
Rise in Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Happy Tuesday. Hope everybody's doing well. We're getting back into the swing of things. Things starting to feel like we're getting back to normal here so far? Well, I'm glad. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. If you're watching us now, can I ask you a favor? You know, this is a live show, and one of the ways that you can help support the show for free is just by clicking that like button. Make sure you click that like button so we can get the feed out in more people's feeds, and we can get more people interested in the ideas of economic freedom and personal liberty. Did you like Hannah Cox on the show today? How about our interview that we had a little bit earlier with Van Skin? I work so hard every single day to bring you the absolute best content that you can get in the mornings to start your day. Best topics, best guests, and make it fun, make it funny, and entertaining and appealing for you. I hope you appreciate it. The Wake Up America show is brought to you by 1.5 Man, a part-time employee. The Wake Up America show has been growing, though, by leaps and bounds since we started in September, thanks to the support of viewers and listeners like you. We've got a lot of great programs that you can help support the show, not only by doing things like purchasing merchandise from the apforlibertyshop.com website, but you can also become a monthly subscriber over on YouTube just for $2.99 a month. There's all sorts of perks and things. If you're a monthly subscriber, you get a 20% permanent discount, well, at least permanently while you're a subscriber to the shop, to the show. You get a 20% discount to apforlibertyshop.com, as well as emojis and fun little things like that. Also, I'm looking at possibly doing a Freedom Ninja or a Cantina Crew get-together this coming summer. So if that's something that you would be interested in, meeting me and my wife Stephanie, and maybe we get Chris Morrill and all the gang together, and we all wear a bunch of t-shirts like a gang, and we dance like the Sharks and the Jets from West Side Story. What would you think? Would you like to do something like that? Give me some feedback. I always every year do at least one canoe trip. And I know that that's not something that absolutely everybody can do, because not everybody can kind of like get in a canoe or spend a day and drive out to the woods with us. But that is something that I do like to invite friends on, is to do like a yearly canoe trip in the Ozarks. If that's something you'd be interested in, let me know. But yeah, we'd love to get together a bunch of friends this summer and do like a little Cantina Crew, I would say reunion, but I would be I think the first time many of us have ever met. What would you think? Would you like to meet Tolly Owens or Robbie Theriman, John Turner, John Rail, Quest Fanning? Maybe if we could get him all the way here from Brooklyn. So yeah, float trip. We would probably have to do something in St. Louis, just because people who would be coming in from out of town, it might be the easiest hub to get people together. But I'd like to try and do something. Echo Bluff float trip. I've never done Echo Bluff. I've done the Current River, and maybe the Little Piney. I'm not entirely sure. You changed your answer to float trip. Okay, good to know. We've done a float trip. Robbie, you've been on a float trip with us, haven't you, bud? I'm pretty sure. Sometimes I get a little bit, my brain gets a little bit baked. Don't forget the big plan to get baked and watch The Water Boy with Edie. Very funny, Chris Morrill. I think we definitely need to have a get together this summer. That's Cantina Crew members only. Let's see here. I'm gonna sneeze probably. There we go. Actually killed that. Okay, so does owning Nazi memorabilia make you a Nazi? Clarence Thomas's rich friend collects, according to The Nation, judges, politicians, and Nazi memorabilia. I need to have the dun, 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 like that squirrel that makes that sound. What is that? The dun dun dun. Yeah, Texas billionaire Harlan Crow is a modern day Charles Foster Kane. Okay, so have you've all seen Citizen Kane, right? Please tell me that you've seen Citizen Kane. You have, right? Okay, good. You've seen Citizen Kane. So this article by this communist Jeet here over at The Nation, actually, I think does it starts off really good, and then it just descends into the typical madness that you have from any lefty, where he says, like all great works of art, Orson Welles' Citizen Kane has many layers. The classic film is, among many other things, a study of the pathology of plutocratic collecting. The movie's central character, of course, Charles Foster Kane, was an avid collector of art, and it's kind of like there he's comparing, the author is comparing Charles Foster Kane to this Texas billionaire Harlan Crow. And the reason why people are attacking this Harlan Crow character is because he's connected to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is accused of accepting gifts from this mega donor. And Harlan Crow, who is linked to Clarence Thomas, has signed copies of Mein Kampf and Adolf Hitler's paintings, which I got to say, honestly, would collect. Yeah. As a big history buff myself, I started out by collecting just rifles from World War II, which was kind of like, that's kind of one of my passions, is military surplus rifles and just military surplus in general. But like one of the things that I look for is German items from World War II because, well, they're not making anymore. It's a lost civilization, if you will, right? The Third Reich isn't coming back anytime soon, no matter how many Nick Fuentes there are out there. But the thing is that collecting Hitler memorabilia does not make you a Nazi. I saw that who's Richard Dreyfuss's son is an interesting character. Camellia sends me his tweets sometimes, and he even came out. He's kind of a lefty. He even came out the other day on Twitter and was saying that just collecting memorabilia from World War II doesn't make you a Nazi because he collects Civil War artifacts, and some of them are Confederate artifacts. Yeah, same here. I mean, I remember being a kid, and God, I feel like I was such a stupid kid. So I was 11 years old, and my mother took me to a garage sale, and they had 2 swords for sale. And as I was in love with Knights of the Round Table, and I read all the King Arthur books when I was a kid, and I loved the Mark Twain book, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court. And they had 2 swords at this garage sale, and one of them looked like a knight's sword and had Samson from the Bible where he brings down the temple walls, and it's got a lion on it, and it's just this very beautiful inlaid sword with the guy who made it, his name is on it, and the guy who owned the sword's name is inscribed in with like roses and flowers, and it's got a knight's at the top of the I guess the pommel of the sword has a knight's with like his helmet, and I mean, it's just a badass looking sword. And it was that versus a Civil War Confederate sword, which is very plain looking compared to the other sword. And my mother at the time, we were looking at both of them, and it was like $50 in 1980 or like 1990. $50 in 1990 was a lot of money. Here's the thing. What is $50 from 1991 in today's money? That would be the equivalent of $110 today. So, I mean, that was a lot of money, especially for my family at that time, because that was before the business started to really take off. But I'm sorry to get off on a tangent with this story, but it's kind of like an important like touchstone story in my life. But when my mother, I asked my mother to buy me the sword, and it was between that Confederate sword and the knight looking sword. Well, I chose the knight looking sword. Big mistake. I found out later, at least, maybe like 2 years ago, I found out that was a big mistake. But I'll never forget my mother. She didn't buy it for me immediately. She initially said no, and then we went home, and I remember I was taking a shower, and I will never forget. My mom like peeked her head into the bathroom and was like, "You know what, Austin? I'm gonna take you back to that garage sale, and I'm gonna buy you that sword." And I was like, "What? Why?" And she goes, "Because Austin, you never asked for anything, unlike today. Child Austin is not the same as adult Austin. Adult Austin asks for a lot of things, like buy gold and go to AP for Liberty shop, but subscribe to the channel, things like that, like this stream. So I grew up and I learned my lesson, learned to ask for things. So anyway, so I bought the sword and I still have it. It hangs on my wall today, and it's a big memento because obviously my mother passed away when I was young. She died only maybe a few years after that. And so I keep it intact because it's so precious to me. Turns out that it's really just I thought that it was a World War I officer's sword, like a British officer's ceremonial sword from World War One. No, it turns out that it's actually a mason's sword, which are really cool, but they're not really worth a whole bunch of money. It's only worth like $110 or something like that today in today's money. So I actually think it's then lost value since the 1990s. But I should have bought the Confederate Civil War sword, not because I sympathize with the Confederacy, but because that is worth money. Have you seen the prices for what Nazi memorabilia goes for these days? I don't know about you, but as somebody who's a military surplus collector, I can tell you that if you can get your hands on like an original German Stahlhelm from World War II that's not beat up, that still has the swastika on it or something like that, or still has the shield on it, man, dude, you get it. If somebody's giving it away, take it. I don't care if you're the Jewiest Jew in all Jewendom. Get that Nazi helmet because that is worth money. It's worth a lot of money. And it's not because the people who are out there who are collectors are Nazis. They're not. They're absolutely not. And I hang out in this community and I watch these videos of these people and they don't have even Nazi sympathies, a lot of them. The funny thing is that the only Nazis that I've ever known or met in my life, like they're the most ahistorical people that you've ever met. Like they know diddly squat about history, most of them. They know the history that they chose to believe from the um what do you call it, revisionist historian texts that they read, or like the Stormfront websites or like forums that they read online with the Nazis and things like that. But they typically aren't the type of people who know a lot about history. The Jewiest Jew in all Jewendom. Yes, exactly. Tolly, thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. They might be the type of people who might support a national divorce. No, I'm just kidding. I had a great conversation with Angela McArdle yesterday of the Libertarian National Party. I'm not saying that she's a Nazi. It's just trying to find a segue here. I had a great conversation with her yesterday about the idea of a national divorce. Is a national divorce a good idea? Is it even in the cards? I spoke with her yesterday. Take a listen. Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Well, is it time for a national divorce? A clamor of voices for people who say that the United States is not fixable. Why would we want to live in a nation of people who hate us? It's a great question. We should probably ask one of the foremost experts in freedom and secession in the United States, the chair of the National Libertarian Party. Her name is Angela McArdle, and she's joining us. I think she's joining us with a little bit of technical issues perhaps this morning, but she's here. Angela, joining us now from Texas. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you, Angela. So we've been discussing it just a little bit to kind of tease your appearance on the show. I asked John Miltimore, the managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education, earlier about the idea of national divorce. He says he thinks it's inevitable. What do you say?
I agree. I do think it's inevitable. I would much rather embrace it in a peaceful way and plan it out than have it happen in an explosive way where we're left scrambling and in reactive mode trying to piece something together.
Is there any chance that it could be peaceful, though, Angela? I've never seen a peaceful secession before in history. Even the American secession from King James required us to, kill a lot of redcoats.
It did, and I think that it could be peaceful. I mean, I wouldn't call the dissolution of the Soviet Union entirely peaceful, but it was pretty close, considering how huge that system was and how tyrannical and violent it was. So, I'm optimistic that we here in the United States can do a lot better than communists did in the early 90s.
For sure. So, make the case. Why do you think that the United States should break up?
We just don't share the same values anymore. I do not think that we have even the same understanding of what the Constitution is. And so it's really difficult to share a country with people who don't agree on what the purpose is, why it was founded, what the role of government is. I think especially we've seen over the last 3 years that there are places that some members of our country are willing to go and the rest of us are not. I don't ever want to lock up my fellow countrymen because they do or do not want to go through certain medical procedures. And I've found that that's not the case. Living in California for so many years, people really thought that unvaccinated Americans deserved to be held down and forcibly injected with something. They thought that people should be placed on permanent house arrest or even put in jail or in prison. And I just don't know how you can come back from something that's gone that far, and with so many people who are that ideologically possessed as well.
I can't say I can't disagree with you on any of that, so I won't, Angela. I absolutely agree with you about those things. However, there are a lot of practical freedoms that we enjoy as American citizens. One of those being the right to travel amongst the many states that we would lose if the United States were to break up. Consider, I just got back from a trip to Japan, and I'll tell you, internationally, it sure did. It wasn't fun having to go through international customs whenever I, was going to and from another country. I mean, I can envision that a lot of states, if they became countries, would probably be very hostile to immigration, like most nations of the world are, and would demand, papers, please, because the stance that many of these states already have when it comes to immigration. I mean, wouldn't we lose a lot of practical freedoms, like the ability to travel between these states without being molested or asked for our papers if there is a national breakup?
Oh, I'm not convinced of that. I think that a lot of states are going to have very easy agreements on travel. Travel used to be so much easier before September 11th, 2001. Living in California, you used to be able to slide back and forth to Mexico with a driver's license. So I'm not confident that travel would be incredibly challenging. It might be to places like California that have already instituted, these little federal or state level mandates from their employees against travel to places like Florida, but you're not going to be able to win them all. And don't worry, Disney World is somewhere else, and you'll always have other theme parks and other beaches as well.
So I imagine if you're for a national divorce, that would mean that you're probably not for, if you're for secession, you're probably not for accession. So let's say if the province of Alberta, Canada, for example, which houses a lot of conservative Canadians, decided to vote that they wanted to join the United States, you wouldn't be in favor of something like that?
I'd definitely be in favor of that, because those people are going to probably be more likely to help us, and vote in constitutionally sound ways. I'd also be in favor of them joining a broken up republic and deciding which way they wanted to go. I'd like to see. Canadians sometimes have different understandings of free speech and Second Amendment rights. I'd like to see where they stand on that. I think that really conservative Canadians have definitely had a wake up call over the last 10 years, especially when it comes to free speech.
One of the things that Alexander Hamilton mentioned in the Federalist Papers of why the United States should have a federal government and be a union rather than a sort of confederation was because he believed that the states would be more want to go to war with one another if they were separate republics versus if they were one unified nation. Isn't that probably the case that the states, certainly, all of our states have rivalries. Missouri hates Kansas, and every state has a border state that they don't like. And, if they were foreign countries, wouldn't those hostilities instead just be more tense and more likely to go to war?
I think a move like national divorce would take a lot of the tension out of things, actually. I don't think that people are ready to go to war with one another unless they're forced into each other's presence at this moment. I think we all need a cool down period. Another thing I'd advocate for might be a trial separation. And I think strict federalism would probably be a great way to go about that. But, ultimately what we've seen is that the Supreme Court does not have the spine to really stand up to dictators like Gavin Newsom. And I'm not confident that the presidency and the federal executive branch will always do the right thing, as we've seen Biden, could repeatedly trample on our rights over and over again.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Happy Monday. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm speaking to the chair of the National Libertarian Party, Angela McArdle, about her views on the concept of a national divorce. So war is one thing, but with the dissolution of the federal government comes the dissolution of the federal constitution and all of the privileges and immunities that are guaranteed thereof. Comes the dissolution of a bicameral system, for example, the dissolution of a Supreme Court, which has been more friendly to libertarian ideals in recent years, as flawed as it may be. Angela, are you really ready to sacrifice the Bill of Rights, and with the belief that any of these states would pass the Second Amendment, even as it was in 1776, or possibly a better version of it? I mean, isn't the more likely outcome that we lose the Bill of Rights and we gain something even worse?
Oh, coming from the great state of Texas right now, I mean, we have open carry. It's so much better than it was in California, with all kinds of ridiculous restrictions on Second Amendment rights. Unfortunately, I think our Bill of Rights is so heavily eroded, it might be time to start over.
Okay, well, I will remind you, of course, that Texas didn't do the best job when it came to COVID compared to other states like Florida or Missouri. I mean, certainly there was, the national level approach to COVID-19 was rather tyrannical, and a lot of people have criticism about both Trump's and Biden's approach to that one. But I mean, Texas themselves, I think, didn't you guys only like get concealed carry recently? I mean, you guys have been a little bit behind the times, and
Yes.
Texas is very much turning blue.
Well, the recent ban on abortion has possibly slowed that blue wave. So we'll see. It does look to me like there are states, some of the conservative states are in competition with each other, and I think competition is a really good thing. Florida definitely lifted their lockdown the earliest. I will remind everyone, though, that Ron DeSantis did keep his great state lockdown for at least a couple of months. South Dakota and I believe Oklahoma actually led the charge on not locking down at all. So kudos to them. I think, though, that competition between conservative states to do better and better is a good thing, and that it's on the rise. And I think Florida might be instituting open carry soon as well.
You quoted Michael Malice in your piece in Reason here, saying that asking the question, why should two monolithic cultures with opposite worldviews continue attempting to move forward as one unit when they are ideologically moving further apart? Do you think that it really is two monolithic worldviews, though, Angela? I mean, can't we give Americans more credit for being a little bit more diverse ideologically? I, I mean, even independents far outnumber the amount of Republicans and Democrats, and the number of registered Republicans and Democrats seems to be shrinking every single year. I mean, we're a much more diverse nation ideologically than just two monoliths. Don't you agree?
I think so. I think, when it boils down to it, people are generally going to go in one direction or the other. But if people had a preference, I would probably see several small nations emerge out of a national divorce. And I'm optimistic that that could be something that happens too. And that would probably be the best case scenario. But, generally we're all forced to frame things in team red or team blue. And people do usually tend to think about it in such simplified terms.
If it were to come to a vote and to come to a debate, and if it were to lead to a conflict, is an armed conflict worth the price?
I think an armed conflict is inevitable. So I almost feel like it's a question that you'd have to ask either way. And if it's going to come down to whether or not I'm going to be forcibly vaccinated subject to some sort of federal law, like, yes, absolutely. If the federal government wants to take away my right to homeschool my child, if the federal government wants to, get that involved in my life, or try to rewrite the Bill of Rights, as they're trying to do over and over again with the Second Amendment, it is a hill worth dying on, because they're only doing that for a few reasons, and those reasons are really sinister. Like, they really do want very intimate control of your personal life.
Makes a lot of sense. If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show, I'm Austin Peterson. I'm speaking to the chair of the National Libertarian Party, Angela McArdle, about the national divorce. I'd like to segue to a little bit of a separate topic here, but it does involve the strength of the United States. Have you been paying attention to what's going on with the de-dollarization? Many countries have started to collude against the American dollar in an attempt to remove the petrodollar's supremacy in the world. Is this something that you're concerned about, that you're following? Are you also following the attempts by the Federal Reserve to create a digital dollar?
Yes and yes. Okay, so I am concerned about it, as any intelligent person should be. I'm very much opposed to central bank digital currencies. I worry that the two are related, right? That our status in the global economy is going to drop a little bit, and the Federal Reserve is going to snap back with a central bank digital currency saying, oh, look, this is the next thing. Everybody get on board. I think it's another great reason for national divorce. Let's go ahead and be proactive about it rather than reactive. Let's set something else up. And I'm also a big proponent of Bitcoin, not all cryptocurrencies in general, but Bitcoin as a way to break the power of the Federal Reserve. I think also if we have better foreign policy, people might not be so fed up with the United States dollar, but that is what fuels, wars abroad and chaos in the Middle East. It's a complicated mess with a lot of problems all tied down to it.
One last question for you on the subject of national divorce, Angela. If the United States does break up into separate independent republics, who gets the nukes?
I guess we'll have to negotiate the terms of that in our divorce settlement. But I imagine that states holding on to the nukes are probably going to have a strong say in that.
Okay, I would say they probably would. Angela McArdle, chair of the National Libertarian Party. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go today?
Sure. If you're interested in the Libertarian Party, you can find out more about us at lp.org, and you can check out my written debate on national divorce in Reason Magazine.
There it is. Check out her written debate on national divorce at Reason Magazine if you're interested in joining the Libertarian Party and fighting for a national divorce alongside Angela McArdle. Check them out at lp.org. Angela, thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate you very much. Standing up for liberty. Have a wonderful day. That was great. What did you think of?
Good morning to the Cantina crew. This is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. And I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
Good morning. It's AP. Thanks so much for tuning in the Wake Up America show. I've still got more content for you. Don't worry, but I didn't want to let the entire show go by without reminding you about my friends over at fieldofgreens.com. All the energy that I needed to do 2 grueling weeks in Japan, traveling all over the country. Well, I've been feeling better, looking better. Don't I have a nice, healthy glow? I think I know why. It's because of my friends over at fieldofgreens.com. They have got a nutrition powder that gets you packed with your 6 cups of fruits and vegetables a day. I know, Tolly and our friends over there. Who else is watching the show right now? Quest, Bert Crash, Chris Morrill, John Turner. You're asking yourself, how can I possibly eat 6 cups of fruits and vegetables per day? You can't. I know. You're like me. You're busy. You ain't got a lot of time. You got your time in the morning to watch and listen to the show, and you're getting ready. And you think, oh, I need to get myself a breakfast. Maybe I'll eat something healthy. Maybe I won't. I'll have some bacon and eggs. But you still need to eat some fruit and vegetables. Or you could have a glass of Field of Greens from my friends over at Brickhouse Nutrition. Use my code AP for Liberty to get 15% off your first order. Check it out, Matt Unruh. I know you already got some. Steffi loves it. fieldofgreens.com. Use the code AP for Liberty. Get yourself a batch of Field of Greens powder. Put it in what I recommend you put it in. Put it in some ice cold water. Shake it up, stir it up until you don't get the graininess anymore, and then you won't taste anything but the delicious. What I recommend, wild berry is my favorite flavor, although a lot of people really like the lemon lime one. Use that code AP for Liberty at fieldofgreens.com to get that 15% discount. And here's the deal, it's got a money back guarantee. If you drink Field of Greens and you go to the doctor and your doctor doesn't say, hey, something you've been doing is making your vital signs a lot healthier, then they'll give you your money back guarantee. It's a money back guarantee at fieldofgreens.com. Use my code AP for Liberty. It's pretty darn good in terms of the health thing, says my lovely wife, Stephanie. Nice to see you, Steph. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, you guys ready to have some fun before we go? What do you say? All right, I found this article just like a few minutes ago because I was like, well, I need something else to talk about before we go because sometimes I'm scrambling. And I'm like, you know what? Nostalgia is always perfect. And this article was great because it reminded me so much of the things that I loved when I was a kid. How many of these things did you do when you were a kid, right? The oldest millennial, that's me, just turned 42 this year. That's me. We're not kids anymore, but we don't really feel all that old either. Oh, I guess I feel a little bit old, but I'm feeling better thanks to Field of Greens. But the ultimate 80s page on Facebook is a nostalgic trip to the good old days, and I've subscribed to it and I've really enjoyed it. Check out this. This is when you were a kid, did you build for your model cars? Did you build like a little like track that you could do them in the dirt? Like, think about this. This is why our generation doesn't get as sick as much, is because we knew how to eat a good handful of dirt when we were kids. I used to do this on the farm with my Hot Wheels, and we would make these little racing things out there. What about you? Did you do this? In the 1980s, this was our Netflix. Yes. And the best thing about the VHS tapes was that you had more than one movie on it. Like I remember Karate Kid Part 1 and Part 2 were on one VHS tape when I was a kid. And God, I probably wore that thing out. I watched it so many times. Absolutely loved my VHS collections. And then the worst was when you had somebody like a sibling tape over something. Absolute nightmare. Totally hated it. Yeah, loved my VHS collection, and you'd borrow tapes from friends. And remember, there was like that thing where you had to like break out that little tab if you didn't want people to record over it. But then people figured out that you could put like a little piece of tape over it, and then you could record over the tape, and that was a thing. Dad, I can't swim. Not with that attitude. Parents of the 80s. Yeah, totally. I'm pretty sure my dad did something like that to me when I was a kid. Like I was scared and he would just like throw my ass into it. My mom is a grandma. That looks dangerous. My mom in 1989. Apparently those things were dangerous. I had no idea that the back of the station wagon was like not a safe place to ride in, because me and my cousins, we rode in that all the time. And there would be like 4 of us riding in the back of that vehicle. So yeah, I guess I'm glad that I didn't die, but yeah, but I definitely it was my cousins, my uncle and aunt had the station wagon, and we loved riding in the back of that thing. That thing was so much fun. Ah, yes, today's kids will never know the strength you needed to get the car window down. Man, I'm trying to think of the last time that I actually had to roll down a window. Can you remember the last time you've done that? Or maybe you still got one of those cars. I don't know. Is this something that poor people have still? I don't know. Yikes. Austin, you're out of touch. You're out of touch. I'm out of time. Speaking of the 80s. Pull down maps. Yes, I remember these back in school. They didn't really teach us geography very well, I could say, but we did have our maps. And then we had to like come up with ways to remember all 50 states. Do you think you could still name all 50 states, by the way? I know a lot. Most Americans can't. Texting in the 80s. Yes, this was awesome because you would make them into like your notes into paper footballs and then you would flick them towards like your crush or whatever. I still have notes that are like in this shape from high school. What about you? Let's see. What else? There's like a something going on the window. When I was a child, this is who told me bedtime stories. I was jealous. We didn't have HBO, we didn't have cable. I was always wicked jealous of my friends who had HBO so that they could watch The Crypt Keeper in, what was it? Not Tales of the Living Dead, but it was like Tales from the Crypt. Tales from the Crypt. Yeah, it's such a great show. I watched an episode that Stephanie and I watched an episode actually last week when we were in Japan. When we were laying down at night, it was on, and I forgot how cheesy they were. I guess it really was kind of like more of a thing for kids, but I remember like being just absolutely terrified by those when I was a kid. But I could only watch them when I went over to my friend's house who had HBO. The Ghostbusters. Yes, me and my buddies, my cousins, we always played Ghostbusters, and my fat cousin Anton would be Ray. My brainy cousin Jensen would be Egon, and I would be Peter because of course he gets the ladies' man. And we would force Christian. Was it Christian or was it Anton? No, Christian would be Ray. We'd force Anton to be Egon, or no, Winston, because he was the youngest, so he had to do what we said because he was the youngest. And nobody wanted to see him because he was the black guy. Oh no, that's racist. We were children. What can I say? Billy Idol was duck facing before it's cool. God, I love Billy Idol. Great cameo in Wedding Singer, by the way. Oh, it's 9:01. I gotta go. Dolly Parton. Yes. Oh, there's so much good nostalgia. I'll have to save it for another day. It's time to go. Did you enjoy the show? Tell me how much you enjoyed it. I gotta hear from you. I gotta know if you like the Wake Up America show. If you enjoy the content that you're getting, I gotta hear from you. One of the best ways to thank me is to give me a like before you go if you haven't already. Right? Or check out our merch over at ap4libertyshop.com. Now that we know that the Chad meme is on the FBI watch list, you got to go get yourself a Chad shirt. Yep. ap4libertyshop.com. Get yourself a beautiful Chad shirt. It's going to be a beautiful day. I hear it's going to be like 80 degrees or something like that out here in mid-Missouri. What's it going to be like where you're at? We'll let you know. We'll see you tomorrow. Todd in Minnesota, it was great to see you again. We missed you, buddy. Nelson, Steffi, Robbie Thurman, Barney Stiles, Bert Crash, Tolly Owens, John Turner. The best show, Nelson. Hell yeah. Amen. Love to see you guys. I always miss you whenever we're gone, but I got to go get some work done and get ready for tomorrow's show because that's what I do. Monday through Friday, I'll be busting my butt, bringing the best content in Liberty Talk Radio News. Not really radio, but podcasting, if you will. We'll see you tomorrow on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today. Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit apforlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.